Okay, hello Tiger Bay. We're going to get started. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Misty Servia. I am the president of Tiger Bay this year. And as we get started, I would like for everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be your president this year. I'm very excited to see so many people here. I see lots of old members, and I hope you've renewed your membership. I see lots of guests, and you please know you're invited to become members of Tiger Bay. You know, the biggest advantage of being a member of Tiger Bay is that gives you the privilege of asking questions of our panel. So please become a member so that you can participate in our lively discussion. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce you to Elaine Tiberini. She is at the registration table. She is our new administrative assistant. You will see her here every month, and we're so thrilled that she's working with us. So I'm going to begin with a few announcements before we start our program. This year, we are starting something that is new and very fun, and we are going to be presenting an award at each luncheon that's called Tiger by the Tail. And that award will be to the person who asks the most engaging question at our luncheon. So I want you to cast aside your shyness. I want you to think about some really great questions, and I want everybody to get up there and ask questions, because that's how we walk away from here more educated on the topic than when we first came in. If you are selected by a secret board member who is here today with the most engaging question, you will get a very beautiful tiger pin that you can proudly wear, and you'll have bragging rights for the month, okay? So please, let's compete for that, and let's get some good questions. A couple of other announcements. I want you to know that we're excited to be in the process of developing a program that will allow our high school students locally to experience Tiger Bay. Dr. Mike Mears, who just walked in, is chairing that committee. He is working on that, and so we'll be bringing those details to you later on as it comes together. We are also in the process of partnering with the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. It is our hope that in the fall of this year that we can partner together and have a combined luncheon that will bring the East County people and the West County people together in East County, and hopefully get more of their participation in Tiger Bay. So at this time, what I'd like to do is ask if there are any board members here to please rise. You'll see a board member because they are wearing a Tiger Bay pin just like mine, or maybe if they're a new member, they don't have one yet, but they'll soon be getting one. So thank you to our board members. They help run this organization. Really appreciate them. Ben Bacher is our new program chair for this year. Ben Bacher was the one who he and his committee put together this program, and he will be putting together all of the future programs this year. Ben is running late, but you'll see him walk in later. Okay, so as we get started, I would like to just go over the rules very quickly. We always try to go in alphabetical order with our speakers so that we approach it very fairly. So that's no different today. We're going to begin in alphabetical order with Miss Carol Kay. We will be moving second to Mr. Melton Little, and Mr. Ken Ceylon will be our third and last speaker. After the speakers have given their presentation, which is going to be 9 minutes or less, then I'm going to ask for questions at the microphone right over here. You will see that I have a timer. I will be timing each speaker for 9 minutes. At 8 minutes, I'm going to stand up to give them the hint that they have 60 seconds left to go. Okay? So with that, I'm going to start with Miss Kay and introduce her, and please tell us a little bit about yourself before you begin. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Kay. I'm an educator. I've retired after 38 and a half years. Thank God I'm retired. I started my own travel business now because I love to travel, and I figure I want to get paid when I travel and have Uncle Sam pay me when I travel. So that's what I do now. I'm also the president of Christian Coalition of Manatee County. It's a nonpartisan group. We just educate people on who's running, what their platforms are, and what the bills are that are in effect, so that people will go to the polls educated and informed to make their decision. Is that enough? May I start talking? You know, I was planning on just answering questions, so I didn't realize that I had 8 minutes, so I'm just going to open my mouth and see what comes out. First of all, I'm not your typical 72-year-old grandma with the Bible thumping and hell and brimstone and all that. I am just a mother and a grandmother who loves children, and that's why I taught. And I love people. And that's why I love doing my travel business, because I sell recess to all of you. So I was asked to talk about my free speech of traditional marriage. And you know, everybody here came from a traditional marriage, a husband and a wife, a man and a woman. I don't condemn those who are in the gay lifestyle. I don't condemn those who are straight that are out committing adultery and fornication. Sin is sin. It doesn't matter. We're all going to be standing before the judge, God. Whether a person believes in God or not, you're going to stand before him, and he will make the judgment. I had a wonderful, beautiful gay man that I knew from church, gorgeous hunk of a man. Oh, and he came to my church after, you know, being in the gay lifestyle, and then he went to Israel, and his whole life changed. And he gave up that lifestyle, but he died of AIDS, which is so sad. Heterosexual who are promiscuous, homosexuals who are promiscuous, they have that medical possibility of a disease that's going to kill them. That's sad. We're not to condemn the homosexual. We're not to condemn the person who's out fornicating. We're not out to condemn anyone. It's their choice, and we have a free choice too. We have a free will. So anyone who says, you know, oh, I hate those homosexuals, and they're just as guilty in sin as anyone else. Some people say they're born that way. I personally don't believe that you're born that way. We are all born in sin according to the Bible. Now, if you don't believe the Bible, you probably won't believe this, but I do. We're all born in sin. And the Bible talks about curses that come down through the family, generation curses. So many children become alcoholics because their father or grandfather had that alcoholic addiction. Homosexuality can come through that same generation curse, that liars or any kind of a sin. So we can't really say that, you know, you were born that way. I was born a female. You were, if you're a man, were born a male. I mean, the way we were made, God made us in a way, just like you put a building up with bolts and nuts, and it holds the building up. God made a man and a woman so that they would connect and procreate. If we don't allow procreation, if we don't stand up for traditional marriage, and we just continue to push gay marriage, where are we going to be? We're going to be gone. There won't be any more people left. The gay marriages, the gay people, they're only about 1.7% in the United States. About 96% are for regular traditional marriage. What I don't appreciate is having one group try to pressure us, who are the majority right now, to be what they want, to accept what they want, to change our laws. It's not healthy for America. And it's all part, if you've ever read about Agenda 21 and the Communist Manifesto, if you will read that, you will see the 45 steps of how the socialists and the communists plan to take over America. One of it is to encourage homosexual lifestyle, teach it in the schools, change our attitudes. Common Core is part of it. So America is fighting invisible things that have been put together in 1962 to destroy us. You have a choice, you have a free will. You can believe whatever you want, you can choose whatever you want. But as for me and my house, we choose traditional marriage, one man and one woman. And when I taught in school, I had some children from 2 mommies and 2 daddies. And those children were so embarrassed. And it was so sad because I didn't know how to help them get over that embarrassment in front of the class because they wanted a daddy and a mommy in the house. So whatever you think about gay marriage or traditional marriage, and if you believe it with all your heart, like our speaker here, go for it, as long as it's going to help people and not just pad our pockets. So that's this little 72-year-old grandma who travels has to say to you. God bless you, and you make your decision.
Okay, thank you very much for staying within the time frame. And Mr. Little, you're next.
Do I get her extra minutes? So am I done? All right, good afternoon. My name is Melton Little. I'm a local attorney. I practice in Palmetto with Callens, Little, Delgado. Megan Graham and Jay Horn are here from my office. My wife Summer's here. I don't want to talk too much about myself. I only have 9 minutes, but my practice is primarily marital and family law, personal injury. Born in Manatee Memorial, moved away, moved back, graduated from Bayshore High School, went to college, came back, been back here now about 30 years. So basically my position, or what I was asked to talk about, was how we got here. I'm not going to express an opinion for or against same-sex marriage. That's not what I understand my role here to be today. My role is to kind of explain how we got here. So let me first explain to you how the courts work. We're talking about federal courts now, not state courts. State courts are a whole different animal. When you go over to the courthouse here in Manatee County, you're at the state court. When you go to the federal courthouse in Tampa, Orlando, or Fort Myers, you're talking about a federal judge. State judges, circuit judges are elected, appellate judges are appointed and then retained by the vote of the citizens. Federal judges are selected by the president, appointed, and are appointed for life. So we're talking about federal judges, not state judges, federal law, not state law. There are 94 United States judicial districts in the United States. There are 12 regional circuit court of appeals. They sit in the appellate process over those regional judges or regional districts. 11 of them are in various states. 1 of them is in the District of Columbia. So you have 11 plus the District of Columbia. There are also special federal courts like the Patent Court, the Trade Court, those kinds of things. But what we're dealing with when we're talking about these issues of same-sex marriage, and you're reading the newspaper that says the court struck them down, you're reading opinions by federal judges, not District Court of Appeals, but individual federal judges. For reference, we're in what's called the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. We have Florida, Alabama, and Georgia in the 11th Circuit. There's also a 6th Circuit Court of Appeals, which will become important in a minute. That serves over the states of Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. How did we get here? We got here because the Supreme Court decided a case called Windsor. And it's kind of interesting that Windsor didn't even really deal with a marriage that occurred within the United States. Windsor dealt with a same-sex couple who married in Canada. And the issue in Windsor was whether or not when one of their spouses died, was the other spouse entitled to the federal tax exemption on the property that was left over. And that tied into the recently passed Defense of Marriage Act, which wound its way all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court opinion was split. You don't read about that very much, but it was a 5-4 decision in Windsor with Justice Kennedy, Justice Ginsburg, Justice Breyer, Justice Kagan and Justice Sotomayor in the majority. The interesting thing about that is the two women on the court were in the majority. Sotomayor and Ginsburg were in the majority on striking down the denial of federal benefits to same-sex couples that had been lawfully married in either a state or a country that recognized that union. Voting on the opposite was Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Scalia, Justice Alito, and Justice Clarence Thomas. They were in the opposition. So the Ginsburg issue was a 5-4 split. We now have 36 states plus the District of Columbia that allow same-sex marriage, either by legislation or by ruling from district judges. In Florida, we're dealing specifically with Justice Hinkle out of Tallahassee. And how did Justice Hinkle get this issue? Well, he got it from the Florida Amendment 2, which passed in 2008 with the support of the voters, with the percentage it needed to pass to become part of the Florida Constitution. And that just simply read, inasmuch as a marriage is a legal union of only one man and one woman as husband and wife, no other legal union that is treated as marriage or the substantial equivalent thereof shall be valid or recognized. So the voters of the state of Florida decided in 2008 that they were not going to allow same-sex marriages, and not only were they not going to allow them, they weren't going to recognize them if they came from other states. That issue then ended up in front of Judge Hinkle. And this is not the first time we've dealt with same-sex issues in Florida. In 2010, we dealt with an issue where a district court, a state district court in Dade County, overturned the ban on adoption by same-sex couples, finding that that was an equal protection violation and there was no legitimate governmental purpose to deny the adoption of a same-sex couple, a child to be adopted by a same-sex couple. That issue was appealed to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals wrote an opinion that upheld the state court and found that there was no legitimate governmental interest to prevent same-sex couples from adopting. And we'll talk about legitimate governmental interest in a minute as I whip through these 9 minutes as quickly as I can. So Justice Hinkle dealt with the question of whether or not marriage is a fundamental right. Justice Hinkle graduated from Florida State in '72, Harvard Law School in '76. He was appointed to the bench by Bill Clinton in 1996. And hopefully I have enough time I get to both sides. But I just have to read you what Justice Hinkle said. Now remember, I'm only doing this in the order of the cases that came out. Justice Hinkle's case came out first in Florida before the district court, the appellate court for the Sixth Circuit, overturned the rulings in Ohio, Michigan, Tennessee, and Kentucky. But here's what Justice Hinkle says about same-sex marriage. He says, "The founders of this nation said in the preamble to the United States that a goal was to secure the blessings of liberty to themselves and their prosperity. Liberty has come more slowly for some than for others. It was 1967, nearly 2 centuries after the Constitution was adopted, before the Supreme Court struck down laws prohibiting interracial marriage, thus protecting the liberty of individuals whose chosen life partner was of a different race. Now, nearly 50 years later, the arguments supporting the ban on interracial marriage seem an obvious pretext for racism. It must be hard for those who were not then of age to understand just how sincerely those views were held. When observers look back 50 years from now, the argument supporting Florida's ban on same-sex marriage, though just as sincerely held, will again seem an obvious pretext for discrimination. Observers who are not now of age will wonder just how these views could have been held." So that was Justice Hinkle's preamble to the opinion he wrote. And what Justice Hinkle was saying was he's going to treat marriage as a fundamental right. That's hugely important in this debate that you're going to be hearing when you listen to the news about the Supreme Court. Is marriage a fundamental right? 19 district judges, including Judge Hinkle, interpret Windsor, the decision by the Supreme Court, to say that the right to marry is a fundamental right. Why is that important? A fundamental right is subject to what's called strict scrutiny under the law. It's different than any other rights. Fundamental rights are the right of freedom of speech, the right of assembly, the right not to house soldiers in your home. Those are things that are fundamental rights that are guaranteed to you under the Constitution of the United States. In the 1880s, following the Civil War, I think it was 1886, the 14th Amendment passed, 1868. 1868, the 14th Amendment passed. And the 14th Amendment was designed to protect the individuals from the states. Why? Well, because we had just gone through a civil war and we had a bunch of southern states that could potentially pass laws that would be detrimental to the individuals that were just freed or any other individual who may have supported the northern cause. So they passed what's called the 14th Amendment. It's in 5 parts. The major part is the Equal Protection Clause, which says that all people will be treated equally under the law. So what Justice Hinkle is doing is he's saying, under the Constitution, we have the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment creates a fundamental right to marriage. If there is a fundamental right to marriage, in order for the state to deny that fundamental right, there has to be a legitimate governmental purpose. In other words, you got to have a really darn good reason, government, to deny a fundamental right to your citizens. And he's finding, in his opinion, which you can just get online, that the 14th Amendment's Due Protection Clause must be reviewed under the strict scrutiny as a fundamental right, and therefore its provisions are unconstitutional. So what did Pam Bondi in the state of Florida say to Justice Hinkle that said there's a legitimate state interest? They said, wait a minute, procreation. Same-sex couples can't procreate. And Justice Hinkle said, what about elderly couples that marry? Was that my 9 minutes?
Yeah, I'm going to give you another 60 seconds to wrap up.
Well, I wouldn't even be able to do it. But basically, Justice, if I have 2 minutes, I can get to the other case. Justice Hinkle says, what about elderly couples? What about couples that aren't able to bear children? What about couples with disabilities? All of those couples are permitted to marry, so I don't find a legitimate governmental purpose in that issue. I could probably go on another 10 minutes, but let me get to the other case. The next case that we have, and then all of these issues have gone up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, we're not hearing them, no need for us to hear it, until the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals came out with an opinion that was published in November. And what the Sixth Circuit Court says, essentially, without reading through it, is that we don't find necessarily that the right to marry is a fundamental right. But what we do find is that it should be decided by the citizens of the state. It should not be decided by the judiciary. And it says, the Sixth Circuit says, and it's interesting, Justice Hinkle's appointed by Clinton. The 2 justices in the Sixth Circuit, one man and one woman, who overturned the lower court's finding that same-sex marriage was unconstitutional, are appointed by George W. Bush. The dissenter in the Sixth Circuit is a woman who's a Clinton appointee. And here's what they say in the majority. This case ultimately presents 2 ways to think about change. One is whether the Supreme Court will constitutionalize a new definition of marriage to meet a new policy views about the issue. The other is whether the court will begin to undertake a different form of change in a way that we as a country optimize the handling of efforts to address requests for new civil liberties. Basically, she says, if the court takes the first approach, it's good news for the plaintiff. We will never know what might have been. If the court takes the second approach, then it will be up to the citizens to decide, just as the 19 states and the District of Columbia have decided whether or not to allow same-sex marriage. So you have the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals now in opposition to all of the lower-level judges, and for that reason the Supreme Court has decided to hear the case, and they'll hear oral arguments in April, and they are taking it so seriously that normally oral arguments are limited in time to 60 minutes a side. They're giving each side 90 minutes, and they're hearing 2 questions. One is the same-sex marriage and the denial of the right of a same-sex couple to marry a fundamental right? And second question they're going to hear is whether or not, if a same-sex couple marries in a state that allows it, is it a denial of their fundamental right to recognize it in a state that doesn't? So that's where we're headed, and that should be decided by June. Okay.
Thank you very much. And I gave him a couple of extra minutes. I felt the historical perspective was important so that everyone understood that. And Mr. Ceylon, you are up next, and you have 9 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Can I introduce myself and not use that 9 minutes? My name is Ken Ceylon. I had a 34-year career with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. I focused in the drug manufacturing and the blood processing area. After I retired in 1996, I did consulting for 10 years in the U.S. and Canada and Europe on blood manufacturing, blood processing and drug manufacturing. And then I was elected to the Sarasota City Commission. Since then, I've been involved with a number of nonprofits, including Equality Florida. I'm 75 years old. I'm a gay man. I'm not HIV positive. I'm not cursed, and I'm not destined for extinction. I have 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and a great-granddaughter. So I think there's hope. There's hope for us. Okay, what is marriage? It could be a religious sacrament, or it could be a series of short-term leases. It's an ancient way of enforcing female chastity. It has been a way of providing for the orderly distribution of property. It has been a way to regulate procreation and creating a way to tamp down sexual lust. And Napoleon said, "I have married a womb." When he divorced Empress Josephine, whom he loved deeply, and married Empress Maria Louise, he did it simply because he wanted an heir. That was the only reason. Historically, marriage has been matrilineal. It's been polygamous. In Athens, there were 3 levels of marriage: gold, silver, and bronze. Gold marriages were to produce legitimate children. Silver marriages were to service daily needs. And bronze marriages were for delight. Marriages have been joyless, sexless, loveless, and Oscar Wilde said, "The only charm of marriage is that it makes the life of deception necessary for both parties." Even in Islam, in the Shia tradition, there are temporary marriages called muta. Okay. So, a fair definition, I think, today for marriage could be a socially or ritually recognized union or legal contract between spouses that establishes rights and obligations between them and their children, and between them and their in-laws. There have been major changes in marriage in Western countries beginning in the 19th century to today. Changes have included giving wives legal identities of their own, which they didn't have in the past. The right of husbands to physically discipline their wives has been abolished. Wives now have property rights that they didn't formerly have. Divorce laws have been liberalized. Wives now have reproductive rights of their own. A wife's consent to sexual relations must exist for sex to occur, otherwise it's rape. The age of marriage is increasing. Fewer people are marrying. More couples are choosing to cohabitate than marry. In Europe, between 1975 and 2005, marriage rates decreased 30%. This is a civil issue. It's not a religious or moral issue. In the USA, we are the most religious, diverse, and tolerant society in the world because our country was founded on the use of reason and science as guiding principles rather than pronouncements of a theocracy. The Constitution protects the individual freedom to believe or not believe in a religious doctrine. That can only occur in a secular government. Founders of our country, by and large, were deists. That includes Thomas Jefferson, it includes John Adams, it includes James Madison, Thomas Paine. They believed in a natural God. Jefferson never said anything about Christianity in the Declaration of Independence. His references there were to the laws of nature and nature's God, using a word used by many religions when he talked about inalienable rights. The use of the word God can have many definitions, ranging from nature to supernatural. What have been the religious changes in recent years, especially since Amendment 2 was passed in Florida? Mainline Protestant denominations, including Episcopalians and Presbyterians, routinely ordain gay ministers and marry gay couples. Methodist ministers are breaking ranks to celebrate gay weddings. Some of you may have read the story about Frank Schaeffer, who was a Methodist minister, married his gay son, and was defrocked. He has been refrocked. Pope Francis has moved recently to become more inclusive. Even amongst white evangelicals, support for gay marriage has increased by double digits over the past decade. Amongst young evangelicals, support jumped from 20% in 2003 to 42% in 2014. There's a fellow in Kansas City who's involved in this movement. It's called the Reformation Project. In his case, Matthew Vines has said, "The LGBT issue has been one of the most obvious forces behind the increasing loss of regard for Christianity in American culture at large. It's like slavery and anti-Semitism, where tradition got it totally wrong. It's one of the church's profound moral failures." Less than 20 years ago, states were free to put same-sex couples in jail for the crime of private, consensual sexual activity. No jurisdiction in the world recognized same-sex marriages. Congress and the President of the United States created a law banning federal recognition of same-sex unions. Colorado's Constitution was amended to forbid any legal protections for homosexual rights. But change has occurred. What does our Constitution say about acceptance and tolerance? As Mr. Little said, the 14th Amendment in a clause says that no one shall be deprived within the court's jurisdiction of the equal protection of the laws. Today, in 1996, the Supreme Court struck down Colorado's law saying gay people cannot be discriminated against through the law no matter what the majority of voters think. In 2003, the Supreme Court said moral teachings are not sufficient reason to deny homosexuals the freedom to form intimate relationships. In 2013, as you heard, U.S. versus Windsor, the Supreme Court ruled that the federal government cannot treat opposite-sex marriages differently from same-sex marriages in states that legalize both. The Supreme Court traditionally interprets rights guaranteed by the Constitution in remarkably broad terms. Same-sex couples don't want to redefine marriage, they simply want to participate in it. The issue isn't whether there's a right to same-sex marriage, but whether same-sex couples can be excluded from the right to marriage. Denying same-sex couples the right to marry only because marriage has historically and traditionally been between a man and a woman is neither a compelling nor even a legitimate government interest. State-imposed inequality can find no refuge in the U.S. Constitution. As of this week, 37 states and the District of Columbia, Alabama, now, as of Monday, will start marrying same-sex couples. And social order has not crumbled into chaos and depravity. Many countries in the world also allow same-sex marriage, and there's no evidence that their societies have crumbled into chaos and depravity. Incidentally, Pam Bondi has indicated as of last Friday that she's not filing an amicus brief in the Supreme Court's decision this coming spring to resolve the discrepancies between the Sixth Circuit and the other circuits. What's the likely outcome? Justice Anthony Kennedy in the 2013 Windsor case said, no, there's no legitimate purpose exists to justify a law to disparage and to injure same-sex couples. It's unlikely that justices who supported Kennedy's opinion of 2013 with its emphasis on the equal dignity of same-sex couples would allow gay marriage to spread from coast to coast, then turn around and enforce state bans. Polls show a majority of Americans are willing, even eager, to see the court take the final step to full equality for gay couples. Okay, how am I doing? One more minute? One more minute? Okay. Same-sex couples started getting married in Florida on January 5th. Judge Zabel in Miami said that could happen. February 12th, the Sarasota Film Festival will screen a locally produced film about same-sex romance and marriage on the roof of the Palm Avenue parking garage. It will be a fundraiser for the Sarasota Film Festival and Equality Florida. My partner of 38 years and I will be married by Judge Charles Williams, and there will be a celebration of that marriage at that event. So you're all welcome. It's February 12th at 6 o'clock on top of the Palm Avenue parking garage. What is the tradition in this country of marriage? I believe it's loving one another. We love the person our hearts choose to love, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you to all of our speakers, and now we are at the point in the program where we have questions and answers. So I will ask that you please line up at the microphone here if you have a question. You do need to be a member of Tiger Bay to ask a question, and if you're not a member, it's okay. We will help you. Go to the table, and we'll make you a member right now. Okay? So I would also like for people to line up, a couple deep, so we're not wasting time waiting for people to walk back and forth. And if I don't repeat the question, I would ask that you please repeat the question so that it is captured by METV. One last thing, please ask questions, please do not make statements, and please be respectful. Okay, thank you. Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Rosalie Schaefer, and I'm a member. Instead of one question for both, I'd like to give one question for each, if possible. Ms. Kay, if medical science could prove that homosexuality is a condition of birth, that it was inborn in, not something that's a choice, would that change your point of view? And Mr. Shallon, what do you say to people who say, if we allow this, what's wrong with polygamy? And how about marriages between close relatives? Are we opening the door to something that's more than what we think it's going to be?
Okay, thank you. So we have two questions, and the first question is for Ms. Kay, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like, can you please tell us how you would feel if people are or are not born
If
with,
medical science
if
could
medical
prove
science
to your
could prove
satisfaction that it's an inborn condition.
an inborn condition? Okay, thank you.
Well, since I stand on the Bible, and that's the only truth I stand on, for my own opinion, if medical science said, I would not believe it, because God is over medical science. And like I said, a person is not born, but they may have that string of desire in them to either be an alcoholic, adulterer, homosexual. So no, I would not believe it.
And Mr. Shelley?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sheelan, you're next, and if you could please
Yes,
repeat
what
the
do you
question.
say to people who say, how about polygamy and
How about polygamy and
close relatives?
close relatives, that sort of thing? Well, first of all, I don't stand on the Bible, not because I'm not religious. We have a strong religious tradition in my family, and my grandson is an extremely devout Roman Catholic, and loves it so much that he spent his honeymoon in Israel going to various church sites in the country. The Bible's very interesting. Exodus chapter 21, verse 7 says, daughters can be sold into slavery. I don't think we believe that. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 44 says, I can possess slaves provided they are purchased from neighboring nations. So perhaps we could buy them from Canada or Mexico. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 10 says we shouldn't eat shrimp, lobster, or clams. It's a good thing we didn't have that on the menu today. And Leviticus chapter 19, verse 19 says we shouldn't wear garments made from two different kinds of threads. Is anybody wearing a cotton polyester blend here today? So the Bible was written by people, and many times it was written hundreds of years after the events that it describes. But we can still describe marriage as between two individuals. You know, one of the things that I've been working on for the last couple of years is creation of ordinances to provide for domestic partnership registries in Southwest Florida. And those very clearly define those relationships as between two individuals. They're gender neutral, but they're between two individuals. And we can continue to treat marriage as a relationship between two individuals, a contract, as I said earlier, between two individuals. That's clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who has the next question? Please approach the microphone with your questions.
My name is Frank Anderson, and I'm a member of Tiger Bay, and I'm a United Methodist minister. And I have wondered, even though I'm a committed Christian and believe the major Christian doctrines, I wonder what gives the Christian person the right to control the lives of people who are not Christian. Do Christians have the right to make the rules and regulations for people who are not Christians? And my question is to Carol Kay.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kay, please repeat the question.
He wants to know, should Christians have the right to more or less control the lives of other people who choose to be against what the Bible says? First of all, I'm not religious. I lost my religion. I became a believer in Jesus Christ. The Word of God opened up to me. I didn't even know what the Word of God was other than Christmas. You put candles and greenery around it on your table. But then my life changed, and I started reading it, and I started understanding it. And in Leviticus, since you're quoting the Bible, you really do good in quoting the Bible. It also says man should not lay with man and woman should not lay with woman also. And you know, we do pick and choose what we want to depend what we believe. And that's all right. That's your choice. But as a Christian, we are only believing what God said. And like I said, we're not going to be the final judge. Live your life with your partner. That's great. If you believe that, do it. If you don't, we don't. I don't condemn him, but I condemn the sin. Because you know, 1 out of 7 people have HIV and they don't even know it. So it's going to spread. Christians, live according to the way you believe the Bible says. Sir, you live your life the way you want. Okay? I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Who has our next question?
I'm Andre Torkelson. I'm a member of Tiger Bay. My question is actually for Melton Little. I'm wondering, in your professional opinion, what do you think is going to happen from the Supreme Court side? Do you have any idea, given what you said, as far as they finally decided to take on this case based off the Sixth Circuit's decision?
Okay. Well, there's a couple of, I have to answer that a couple of ways. I mean, first, the question is, what do I think the Supreme Court will do on the issue of same-sex marriage when that issue comes before it? And to kind of, I have to basically lay a predicate for that answer as to what I think will happen. First of all, I can tell you the reason that we don't have close relatives marrying each other or polygamy is that there's a legitimate state interest in preventing that. If we had polygamy, then I could potentially have 6 wives making 6 different Social Security claims, and I don't think the government would appreciate that. I could add 6 wives to my health insurance policy. You know, I mean, there's some legitimate economic underpinnings to same-sex marriage. And you know, the same-sex couples are, you know, are also now going to be careful, you know, be careful with what you ask for, you might get it, because now we're going to have same-sex divorces. So just as we have marriage, we will now have same-sex divorce. So property that you thought you were putting into your pension plan in a same-sex relationship that belongs solely to you will now also belong in half to your partner if you made those contributions during your marriage, okay? So having said that, the issue is whether or not the Supreme Court will find that marriage is a fundamental right of an individual, or whether they will find, as Justice Sutton, who wrote the majority for the 6th District opinion, says, when the courts do not let people resolve new social issues like this one, the courts perpetuate the idea that the heroes in these change events are judges and lawyers. Better in this instant, we think, to allow change through customary political process in which the people, gay and straight alike, become the heroes of their own stories by meeting each other not as adversaries in a court system, but as fellow citizens seeking to resolve a new social issue in a fair-minded way. So I don't want anyone to leave thinking the 6th District said we don't like gay marriage. That isn't what they said. What the 6th District said was, we don't think this is an issue that judges and lawyers should decide. We think this is an issue that the people will decide. So what do I think will happen on the Supreme Court? I think you're going to have some blistering questions from both sides of the issue. And I think that those that voted in opposition on the Windsor case are going to take the 6th District opinion to heart and pound it into those that are arguing on behalf of the fact that it's a fundamental right. And then ultimately, I think, you will have another 5-4 decision. Now, it depends on whether or not that 5-4 decision goes one way or the other, that I can't predict. But I predict it will be a very close 5-4 decision, with one of those voting either swinging to the fact that, look, we never said that the states were mandated under the 14th Amendment, and we never said it was an equal protection issue. All we said was when you were already married and you were legitimately married somewhere where the law allowed you to be married, you could not be denied federal benefits. That's what part of the argument's going to be. And then the other part of the argument's going to be, is marriage a fundamental right? So it's going to be close. It's going to be a 5-4 decision, I would think. And it's going to be whether or not one of those 5 judges that participated in the Windsor opinion participated based on the fact that the marriage was already legitimate, or whether or not they found in their own heart that it was a 14th Amendment issue. And I'm not so sure that all 5 judges in Windsor felt it was a 14th Amendment issue. I think there may be some play in a few of those judges that it's not necessarily a 14th Amendment issue. It's the people spoke, the people decided that these 2 people could be married. Now we can't deny them those benefits. So it's basically coming down to, is it up to the courts to decide, or is it up to the people to decide? That's the best answer I can give you.
Thank you. And Mr. Ceylon has asked if he could make a quick comment, and I'm going to offer that same amount of time to Ms. Kay if she would like to make comments.
Well, have we forgotten about slavery? Have we forgotten about the fact that it took a constitutional amendment to give women the right to vote? Have we forgotten about Brown versus the school board and segregated schools? We have fought for 270 years to achieve equality in this country, and the voter isn't always right.
Well, maybe the voter isn't always right, but I thought our government ran on the people making the decision what the amendments would be. And I am very upset that our amendment was turned because of a judge. Marriage from the beginning, 2,000 years. Why is marriage changing now from traditional to gay marriage? I don't understand. Of the 37 states that have gay marriage now, only 12 voted. 12 states voted for gay marriage. The other ones were overturned by a judge. So they're playing God. We're having a lot of problems with hate crimes. We can't even say that we believe in traditional marriage anymore. Miss California, Carrie Pergine, I think her name was ostracized because she said, I believe in traditional marriage of a man and a woman. And Paris Hilton, more or less, called her a bitch and everything else. But he was not a hate crime. They're claiming she is in a hate crime.
Davis?
Hey, I'm Davis Graham, and I am a Tiger Bay member, and I'm also of a traditional marriage, and I am a Christian. And Milton, I just want to thank you for the sifting through the Hollywood side of this issue, and also in marriage, I'm going to go out of line just a little bit, but in marriage it is difficult. It's my agreement in my marriage is partially with my wife, but mainly to the Lord, to serve the Lord the way He's asked me to serve Him, to serve my wife the same way. I'm a bond servant to my wife. My question's to Ken. What prevented you to go out to another state to get married to your partner, and why did you wait until now? And tell me what your feeling is and about this monumental day in your life to come, to that union between, and to make it, tell us the importance of the union that's going to take place on that day.
Mm-hmm. Why didn't we go to another state to get married that does provide for legal same-sex marriage? And why do we choose to do this in the first place? Is that your point?
Yeah, and I mean, if you waited that long, what made you wait? And then to set
Mm-hmm.
this day?
Because I believe in equality.
Okay.
And I was waiting for Florida to wake up and embrace equality. The idea of getting married is a very liberating one. For much of those 38 years, we've hidden our relationship, not just from the public, but from the family. And that's not right. I don't want to live that way. We've had a very successful, a very productive, a very constructive relationship over those 38 years. I've had a very successful career because of the support I got from him. He had a very successful career in part because of the support I gave him. But it's very liberating now to be able to embrace publicly this union. And that's why we're doing it, because we want to share the happiness that we have with the entire community.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to that. You know, there's a lot of people that are living together today, and one of the reasons they don't get married is because they think that it's just too bonding of a relationship. Can you talk about that?
Some people don't get married because they don't like the constraints of marriage.
That's what they say. Right?
Well, that's a choice they make, and
Right.
and in this country, they're allowed to make that choice.
Right.
It's a secular country. It's not based on a theocracy. They're free to do whatever they want to do, whatever floats their boat, whatever makes them happy, and that's the choice that we made.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki?
Hi, my name is Vicki Followell, and I'm a new Tiger Bay member. I have a question for all three of the panelists if they'd like to address it, but I would like to request that Mr. Little address it first if he has something to add. As a person who's 55 years old and lived in Manatee County all my life, the fact that I'm sitting in a restaurant in this community having this discussion is amazing to me. I'm from a conservative, fundamental Christian background. I'm married nearly 35 years to my husband, my first and only husband to date. And how did the shift in our society become affected that we're able to have a conversation like this and people have come to change opinions, move in different directions than they thought they would have done before, and how is that going to impact the future decision of the Supreme Court? And I referenced that to you, Mr. Little, by your conversation that you wondered if some of those justices actually had in their hearts that people have spoken, the tide has changed, and we need to honor that. So I'm just asking, what do you think shifted this discussion to make it possible and very likely to be the majority? Thanks.
Well, I think the discussion is a long time in coming, just as no doubt the discussion of interracial marriage was a long time in coming as well. Justice Hinkle, in his opinion, said, "The undeniable truth is that Florida's ban on same-sex marriage stems entirely or almost entirely from a moral disapproval of the practice. Properly analyzed, the ban must stand or fall on the proposition that the state can enforce that moral disapproval without violating the 14th Amendment." I hope that made sense. What he was saying was, I recognize that there's a lot of people that are going to morally disapprove of that. That's not what I'm to decide as the judge. What I'm to decide is whether that moral disapproval, standing on its own, is sufficient enough of a state interest to violate the 14th Amendment. He found it wasn't. There is a recent Quinnipiac poll that shows a shifting of public opinion on the issue. It's now 56-44 that say that they support same-sex unions or same-sex marriages. That's a significant shift from just 2008 when the Florida voters supported the Constitution. Do I think that the Supreme Court cares about public opinion? I don't think they give an iota about public opinion. I don't think they care what the public thinks one way or another as to a moral issue or a value or otherwise. They're appointed for life. I think that those justices are the brightest and best this country has to offer. So they choose to follow whether or not the dicta of the previous cases that they've ruled on and whether or not the history of the law under which they're ruling follows the current interpretation of the Constitution. Now, it hasn't always been that way. At times the Supreme Court had been very political. Dred Scott, where we said slaves were property, was obviously a political decision by the Supreme Court. Brown versus Board of Education, another landmark decision, was not swayed. The court was not swayed necessarily by public opinion in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky about whether or not they were going to integrate their schools. Had they been concerned about public opinion, they certainly wouldn't have ruled the way that they did, that separate but equal facilities were inherently unequal. So I don't think the Supreme Court's conducting a poll, and I don't think they're looking for public opinion. I think that they are going to wrestle with a very difficult decision on three fronts. One, is the right to marry a fundamental right? Fundamental, like the right of freedom of speech or the right of freedom of assembly. If it is a fundamental right, and they find that it is a fundamental right, they are going to apply strict scrutiny to it. And they're going to ask these litigants, what's the rational governmental purpose for you denying this? And they better have a good answer for it, or you might not even see a 5-4 decision. The second thing that they're going to do that Justice Hinkle did that I don't think the 6th District did is they're going to treat same-sex marriage as a minority, as Carol said, 1.7%. We have under the law I torture my wife with this, a definition of a suspect classification. A suspect classification is a group of people that are a discrete and ancillary minority in need of protection from the majority political process. Caroline Products, footnote 4. What that's saying is when we have a minority and we have that minority's rights being usurped by the majority, just because that's a minority and we recognize it as a minority, not only are we going to apply a strict scrutiny test, but we're going to treat that minority as a suspect classification under the Constitution, and we're going to look very, very carefully at whether the majority has the right to determine what happens to that minority, whether it be any type of minority, whether it be a racial, whether it be a religious, whether it be a same-sex couple. So I hope that answered your question.
Did you want to add anything?
Going back to the question, I think, is how did we get here? Is that it? Because of the United Nations and our part in the United Nations, where we support them, and if we took our money out, they would fold. The goal of the United Nations is a one world government. And in the one world government of Agenda 21, which came from the United Nations, all of this is included in their plan. And I truly believe the Supreme Court's going to favor Mr. Ken's side, which doesn't make it right. But if you look at the Agenda 21, it's under the guise of environment and green and taking land from our homes, from our businesses, giving it to non-humans. I mean, so many little bugs are more important than you and I anymore. So if you read that and see what the plan of the United Nations is, get into the schools, they want to take control of humans. And we're going to fall into that. The colleges are teaching the kids that this is a lifestyle that they can choose. It's another lifestyle. So it's all going to happen. It's probably all predicted too in the Bible. So we have to just stand on our principles and live the way you want to live, and then meet God at the end.
I think it goes back to the issue of equality. You know, the political process is a dynamic one. We've worked our way through a series of inequalities in this country. We were initially governed by property-owning aristocrats. We got through that. We got rid of slavery through a bloody war that divided the country and still does in some cases. We still have the issue of reproductive rights for women. The LGBT movement as a political movement is only 50 years old. And it started in 1969. Some of you probably have heard of the Stonewall riots in New York City, the New York City Police Department repeatedly was raiding gay bars, and these were the only places where gay people could go and meet other gay people. And they finally said, enough. We've had enough. We're not going to put up with it anymore. And one of the things that happened as a consequence of that was the gay people started coming out. There actually is a celebration every year called National Coming Out Day, where gay people are encouraged to open up. And suddenly, as gay people become visible in our communities, people are realizing, hey, that's my brother, or that's my son, or that's my sister. And they're not green-eyed monsters. They're ordinary people who are living good lives, religious lives in some instances. So I think it's a process we're going to continue to undergo as time goes on. We're always going to be striving for that issue of equality that's embedded in our Constitution.
Can I add one thing real quick?
Okay, you can add one thing if it's very fast,
Very-
because we
very
do have a
fast.
final question to take after this.
I think I left out part of the answer to your question, too. And I don't think I covered it because I didn't have enough time. But it's important to realize, too, who are the plaintiffs that are bringing these actions? Who's the people that are bringing these things to the court? They're people like a lesbian couple in Leon County, where one of them's a firefighter, and she's concerned that if she's injured in the line of duty, her partner won't be able to receive the benefits that heterosexual couples will. One of them was a lady who was not permitted to be on the death certificate of her 35-year partner when the partner died. So one of the defendants was the coroner's office, who wouldn't put her name on the death certificate. A number of these cases deal with the opportunity to obtain health insurance benefits as a spouse, or the opportunity to inherit under the laws of the state as a spouse, or the opportunity to receive federal benefits as a surviving spouse, or to list your partner as a surviving spouse as the person who is the beneficiary of your Social Security benefits in the event that you pass away before them. So there's economic issues to this too. So how did we get here? We got here not only, through the process of the equality that everybody's talking about, but we also got here through the follow the money angle too, which is the process of, look, if I'm in a heterosexual relationship, why can't, and my spouse can get line of duty benefits, then what about my 30-year partner? Why can't they get them? So I don't think I answered that fully, so I appreciate you letting me answer it.
Thank you very much. And the final question is from David Clement.
David Clement, and I'm a member of the Suncoast Tiger Bay Board across the bay in St. Pete, and also a board member. I'm doing a program on this topic in St. Pete on March 26th, so I have an interest in to have done a little investigation of it. My question has to do with the sociological impacts if the Supreme Court does approve it. We've had thousands of years of cultural practice of forbidding or banning same-sex marriage, and now in a relatively very short time compared to slavery or civil rights or some of the other changes that we've undergone that had sociological impact. This is very, very rapid. 2008, we voted to ban it. So what are the sociological implications that you see, Ms. Kay or Mr. Ceylon, if this is approved? And maybe even financial. I've been told that businesses could have a great financial hit regarding insurance and retirement issues. I don't know if they're true, but if either of you could speak with that.
Okay, the question is about sociological and financial impacts. And who would like to go first? Ken Sheelan?
What's very interesting is that point is just the opposite of what I hear. Most of the Fortune 500 corporations in the United States have very tolerant and inclusive and diverse policies. My mother and many members of my family worked for the DuPont Company because I come from Wilmington, Delaware. And I was organizing some of my mother's financial records recently, and I ran across a document from the DuPont Company that was about 40 years old. It was an insurance document. And it referenced domestic partners. And I thought, wow, Business understands that diversity and inclusion are economic development tools. When you have a diverse workforce and an inclusive workforce, you have a creative and innovative workforce. And so they look for communities when they're locating. They look for communities that are diverse and inclusive. So it's really just the opposite of the point that you were repeating as having been heard.
I believe I hear what you're saying more so than what he is saying from people. But if we continue to encourage gay marriage, eventually we're going to be depopulated. Where are the children going to come from? Already our Social Security is bankrupt. And I know there are some of you in here that are in the gay lifestyle, and that's okay. I see your eyes rolling and all. That's okay. But we should not be forced to accept what you want. You're a small majority, or minority, I should say. And we cannot compare you to the black people who, under Amendment 14, so many of the gay rights are trying to piggyback on Amendment 14. You're completely different. But we are going to suffer more than we are now. You know, Americans have right now 1.7 children, 1.7. The Muslims have 7 or more. So we're either going to be depopulated with Americans, citizens, or we're going to be taken over by Islam. Something's going to happen. I don't know exactly what will. We've just got to pray and stand on our principles.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a few announcements as we leave today. I would ask you all to keep Gene Witt's family in your prayers as he has passed away today. Please, board members, before you leave, see Elaine at the registration table. Do not leave without seeing her. I want to give a big thanks to METV for being here today. They have been at the Leadership Prayer Breakfast at 7 a.m. at the board meeting and now here. So thank you so much for being here. Most of all, thank you to our members who came today. Thank you very much to the speakers who are here. You all did an excellent job, and I'm really happy that you were here and we could discuss this. Next month, our meeting is on March the 5th. Please don't forget to sign up, and we will be discussing the economics of the sporting industry in Manatee County. Thank you again. Oh, yes, I almost forgot our new award. I'm going to ask Mr. Steve Hall, who is our board member, been selected today to award the Tiger by the Tail Award for the most engaging question. So, Steve, tell us who the winner is.
No, I thought our panelists did a phenomenal job. I learned a tremendous amount today. And I thought the most thought-provoking question and really kicked off a lot of the discussion today was Andre Torkelton. If I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize, but I thought he really got the show going here today, and thank you so much for that question. And with that, you are our Tiger by the Tail, and we'll give you a pin.
All right, congratulations, Andre. And again, thank you. See you next month.